your marriage is the worst place to let yourself go. Hi, welcome to Worthiness Wednesdays. This is the series where I talk about clients' experiences with the spiritual practice known as the Positively Focused Framework. Who am I? I'm Perry Gruber, the Enlightenment Guy. For over a decade, I've helped people master their mindsets so they can live lives they love and get results without the burnout or the hustle. And today I want to talk about a client. I'm going to anonymize the story, so that you can't figure out who this person is. But it's a really powerful story, and I may have to do it in two parts because it's really long, but it really shows the power of our creative focus, especially with regard to creating people in our lives. This story also shows the power of dreams in their ability to soothe things that we don't like in our life experience. And this is why dreams are such, oh my God, they offer such value, but you've got to be aware that you're dreaming. I'm going to talk about the dream aspect of this story in the second episode, probably, because the story I'm about to tell is pretty long. I promise I'll follow up this one with that second one so that you can keep continuity in the story. Okay, so I have these two clients. They are in a domestic partnership, and they've been together for quite a while. The husband, I'll call Ken, was married 2 times before. The first time he was married was with the most, in his words, the most idyllic woman. The problem is they got married, according to him, they got married too soon and she didn't realize. She thought she could change Ken. Ken never wanted children. She wanted children, and she thought that Ken would come around eventually. And so when push came to shove and Ken wasn't willing to budge, they had to get a divorce. It was amicable. The second person that Ken married was a woman named Christy. And Christy was the almost polar opposite of the first woman that Ken married. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about Christy. I'll just say that the relationship Ken had with Christy in their marriage was presenting Ken with a metric crap ton of contrast. Remember, if you're watching my series or any of the videos on this channel, you know that contrast means negative experiences. They're not negative experiences, and that's why I call them contrast. They're actually positive experiences, but because humans don't understand the nature of contrast, they characterize these experiences as negative. So anyway, here Ken was. I'm just going to pause this for just a second because I need to make an adjustment. Just 1 second. All right. So here Ken was moving through this relationship, this marriage of his that he did not enjoy being in. And the more he did not enjoy it, the worse it got. Till finally, he ended up having to divorce this woman after, like I said, a lot of contrast. As part of the divorce settlement, because he was so determined to never have to interact with this woman again, he ended up paying her $1 million cash. And so that took a toll on Ken's savings plan, as he's very diligent preparer for the future. Flash forward a few years later, and Ken meets a woman who he had hired at a startup he was working at. And this person eventually becomes the domestic partner he's with. Now, Ken is a high-powered corporate officer at a very large manufacturing firm. And as you can imagine, as a VP level employee, he has a lot of pressure on him at work. And so, in his words, when he comes home, he likes to let go. He likes to relax and just kind of be himself, you could say. But this is the problem about being in relationships that are like domestic partnerships or marriage, is that it's more important that you not let go in your marriage than not letting go at your job, because in your marriage you're with this person all the time. And the version of the person that you're with all the time, you're creating. And that person you're creating is emerging just like all of your other experiences in physical reality. The person you're creating in your marriage or in your partnership is emerging from the thoughts and beliefs you have about that person. So Ken would come home from work exhausted. He'd have a couple of martinis. This was before he became a positively focused a positively focused client. He'd come home and every day he would have 2 martinis before, as a way of winding down. And so after he would have these, or while having these 2 martinis, he would talk about things, kind of stream of consciousness with his partner. And some of the things he would talk about would be lamentations. He would lament about his relationship with his previous wife, his ex-wife. And he would tell basically horror stories about this woman to his current partner. Remember, the partner is also a client. So these 2 people, Ken and his partner, both of whom are clients, would have this co-creative dynamic in their partnership, where Ken would come home, have a few drinks, and then talk about or lament his experiences in his past with his ex-wife, Christy. Well, it's not surprising that his partner, Ken's partner, would be listening to what Ken is saying and feel sorry for Ken. And it's also not surprising, now all of this was happening before both of these 2 people became positively focused clients. It's also not surprising that in her compassion that she felt, by the way, compassion is not a good thing to feel for people because it amplifies the negative experience, the contrast that that person is experiencing for that person and for the person who's feeling the compassion. Nevertheless, the client, the female part of the partnership, feeling compassion for Ken, vowed to herself to never want to repeat those experiences that Ken had with Christy in the past. The momentum behind that vow or that determination on Ken's partner's part began to create a dynamic within her where she began to feel insecure. Now, there's a lot going on here, and it's important that we talk about all the things that are going on because all of it is important. From Ken's perspective, when he's sharing about what was happening with Christy to his current partner, and his current partner is collapsing into the momentum of those stories, and on top of collapsing into the momentum, vows to herself not to be that person for Ken. Ken is creating a version of his current partner that will match Christy. At the exact same time that's happening, Ken's partner, in vowing not to be like Christy, when she makes that vow and puts the emotional intensity of compassion behind that vow, what the universe hears, the universe does not hear negation. So what the universe hears is Ken's partner wants to be like Christy. And so Ken is creating a version of his current partner by talking about his ex that is going to match who his ex was. And at the same time, it's a co-creation. Ken's partner is doing the exact same thing by vowing not to be like Ken's ex-wife. So one day, Ken's current partner gets fired at work. And this is while she is a positively focused client. And of course, because she's a positively focused client, she struggles a little bit, but then she gets her footing. She recognizes that getting fired is contrast. It's not a negative experience. And then she realizes that she's not meant to be in the corporate world because she has this affinity with being spiritual. Such a good affinity. Everyone has that affinity, but she has this in spades. And that's why the universe had her move out of the corporate environment, because it's not a good fit for her. So she decides then to start her own business. And the interesting thing about this dynamic, because Ken started it off by just kind of letting it all hang out, telling negative stories about his ex to his current partner. That was the start of this. So when Ken's partner started this business, in her mind, because Ken is a powerful VP at a very large company, she believed a powerful. Now, not only was he a powerful VP, is he a powerful VP at his current company, but before, remember, he hired this person as part of a startup he was also running. So the partner, let's call her Julie. Julie had seen a lot of Ken's success in the working world. And having been fired, this already triggered within Julie the fear, the belief, it's a belief constellation, the fear that she is going to end up doing to Ken what Christy did to Ken. It was exacerbated when Ken decided that he was going to support the development of Julie's business, financially support it. Now, from Ken's perspective, Ken doesn't think Julie is at all like Christy, or else he wouldn't have married her. But from Julie's perspective, because of her vow and the fear that comes along with that, if you make a vow like that, I'm not going to be like that other person, then it's likely you're going to have momentum where you're constantly second guessing how you're being as you compare on a continuous basis whether or not you're being like the thing you said you're not going to be. So when Ken chose to financially support Julie's business, he had no expectation as to how that was going to look, how the business was going to go, how fast it was going to grow, what the details of growing it were going to be. He left that totally up to Julie. But in Julie's mind, she felt that she was on the hook. She wasn't totally present to this, but it was obvious to me that the choices she was making in running this company were aligned with two things. One, trying to do it the way Ken would do it in order to please Ken. And two, trying not to make mistakes so that Ken, in Julie's mind, isn't thinking, oh no, I've married another Christy. This is a problem. This is all going on in Julie's mind. And so Julie was kind of on the edge vibrationally because she had put, this is so good, she had put Ken's priorities, actually, she had put what she believes Ken's priorities are in front of her own priorities. And whenever you put another person's opinions or priorities or desires ahead of your own, you have shot yourself in the foot with regard to having a happy life. So, and that's because you're meant to put your own opinions and your own desires ahead of everything else in your life. I call this the order of operation, and I'll be talking about the order of operation in a future 101 video in the 101 series. So Julie, the first thing Julie did, which she didn't need to do, and you'll see this as it unfolds later, the first thing that she did was she spent thousands of dollars on a course to teach her something that she felt she needed. She didn't need that, as you'll see. She went through the course, and then through the course, she got customers through what the course taught her to do to pay off the cost of the course. Then she continued to do the course. Again, you should always put your own opinions ahead of everyone else's. You know what you're doing in your experience. No one else knows what you're doing. But putting other people's opinion ahead of your own gets you out of whack with regard to your inner being guidance. And that's what Julie had done. Julie felt that taking this course is what Ken would have done. And so that's why she took the course. And the more she tried to implement what the course had taught her, it was a marketing funnel training program. The more she tried to implement that, the more out of whack she got because the results she was getting were goose eggs. The more she tried to use social media to get leads, the less leads she got. In fact, nothing was happening as a result of implementing that stuff. She also decided at the beginning of starting her company that she was going to create this great big framework, this great big structure where she would mentor disadvantaged people to learn to do what she knew how to do. That mentorship structure was taking a lot of Julie's time. In fact, it was taking so much time, there was hardly any time for her to generate any revenue for the company. And then Julie took on an assistant, one of her good friends, to help her run the company. And she was paying this assistant quite a bit of money that was coming out of Ken's pockets. So all of this was coming to a head like 6 months after she had started the business, given all of the things I just told you about it. And meanwhile, she had attracted, and I'm emphasizing the word attraction because this is how it happened. She had attracted 4 different customers. And the 4 different customers came to her in magical ways, in ways aligned with the positively focused practice. In one case, her dentist, a conversation with her dentist turned the dentist into a customer. In another case, she met someone through someone at a business event. In another case, her cat sitter introduced her to a customer. And so, and then through the second customer, she met the 4th customer. So the customers were coming, the business was growing, not by what Julie was doing, but through who she was being. And as that success was happening, of course, Julie couldn't recognize this. One day when I talked with her about the 4 customers she had, she claimed that she only had 2 customers. And the reason why she made that claim, which was the truth for her, was because her beliefs would not acknowledge that the customers she had were coming through a way other than the business formation she had created, as she created it in the context of what she thought Ken was thinking about her business. Can you see how convoluted this is? Can you see how complex we make our lives through our thoughts and beliefs, and that life can be really easy if you just let go and allow yourself to enjoy the unfolding of your life experience where the universe is giving everything you want? It can be super easy, but most people make it really hard. And that's what both Ken and Julie were doing. They were co-creating a reality, this business, that was amplifying everything that was going on in their relationship. And so eventually everything came to a head in Julie's mind. She was feeling under pressure, coming up with all these deadlines that she believed Ken believed had to be put in place. And when I talked with Ken in his session, he was like, anytime you hear Julie talking about a deadline, that's something she's put in place. I don't have any deadline expectations for her. And so eventually Julie had to fire her assistant because the money concerns she had, that Julie had, was overwhelming her ability to practically benefit from the value that her assistant was giving. Julie couldn't see the value her assistant was giving because it was overshadowed in Julie's mind by the amount of money that she, via Ken, was paying for the assistant's work. And then she gave up on the mentorship model because that was taking up too much time. Eventually, we being me, Ken, and Julie, came into a group session where we talked about the unfolding of all of this that was happening. And we realized over time, after that group session, that everything that was unfolding was perfect because it was showing Ken how he had created a kind of monster in the one he loved by sharing with her stories of his ex-wife that then, in Ken's experience, was creating a version of Julie that was turning out to be just like his ex-wife, neurotic, panicking all the time, insecure, and concerned about money. And then on Julie's side, Julie, having made that vow to never be like Christy, which the universe hears, I'm going to be like Christy, was all wrapped around the mental axle as she was thinking about what she was thinking Ken was thinking about her business. which Ken wasn't at all thinking about those things. It was all in Julie's mind. It all came to a head with a dream, a series of dreams that Julie had. Meanwhile, in talking with Ken in his sessions, Ken realized that it's not a good idea to just come home, drink a couple of martinis, and then let your lips fly, because you're every time something is coming out of your mouth, you're creating a reality. And so you want to be really deliberate, Ken discovered, with what's coming out of your mouth, because your words create your world. And so Ken has vowed to not only stop talking about Christy in his relationship, but he's also vowed, since he realized that he's creating a version of Julie that he doesn't like, to try to create a version of Julie that he does like. And at the same time, because there's no such thing as past, present, and future, everything is happening now, Ken also vowed to begin creating a better version of Christy, a better version of his ex-wife, so that his ex-wife doesn't keep showing up in his present moment and taint his present moment with the contrast that she presented Ken, contrast that was to his benefit, contrast that helped him see how powerful of a creator he is. So, as you can tell, it's a very complex story, but this is physical reality. Physical reality is complex, and it's a co-creation. It's a co-creation of each individual point of consciousness, which is what you are and what I am. It's a co-creation of each individual point of consciousness, co-creating with all the other individual points of consciousness to create the complex reality we call physical reality, while at the same time, each of those points of consciousnesses are creating their individual universe where no one else is in that universe other than themselves. And in that individual universe, instead of other beings being there are the versions of other people we are creating through the beliefs we have about those people. That's what Julie was doing around Ken, creating a version of Ken. That's what Ken was doing around Julie. And that's what both of them in their individual realities were doing around Christy. So this is part one. In the next part, we're going to explore what happened when Julie had those wonderful dreams that represented a major breakthrough. See you next time, and see you in the comments.